Okay, everyone, thank you to episode 2 of our LC Roundtable. We've got 4 more coaches who have volunteered to come forward and pass on their knowledge to the new guys. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is make this this game better for all involved in the UK. So without further ado, I will let each individual introduce themselves and give you a bit about their background. So everyone step forward, feel free to take it in turns and have at it, gents.
Yeah, I can start off. So my name is Levi Edwards. I'm the head coach and play caller from the Chester Romans. Also coach quarterbacks for the Team GB Junior program. Originally from Savannah, Georgia, moved over to the UK probably about 4 years ago now. Been involved with the Romans since I've been here. Was involved in coaching back home, high school, just kind of as a student assistant during my time there, and then afterwards coaching at the high school as well. So that's kind of a brief intro of me. I'll pass over to somebody else.
Yeah, I don't mind. Adam Lillis, offensive coordinator for the men's adult team for the Kent Exiles, Premiership South. I've got many hats. So I'm also the head coach of the City Wolfpack, which is a Division 2 university team in London. And I'm also now the running backs coach for the GB men's adult team. And just as a brief history, started playing back in 2004 for the University of Kent. Spent about 7 years there in total as a player, coach, and eventually offensive coordinator there as well. And then I've moved into being a head coach at University, City University, and then dipped in and out of being a player coach for the senior leagues for the East Kent Mavericks for 10 years, and then now entering my 5th season with the Kent Exiles. But this will be my first, well, 2020 was supposed to be my first non-playing season in the adult team as the offensive coordinator, but obviously now going into my 2nd year. But obviously with COVID being cancelled. But yeah, that's a whistle-stop tour of me.
Cool. So I am Grant Lawless. Had to check that then. I am current OC at the Nottingham Caesars. In addition to that, I also coach the offensive line at the NTU Renegades. Previous roles that I've done is I've done some Midlands bits and then down in London as well. So as OC at South London Renegades, the junior program. Defensive coordinator at Nottingham Caesars a couple of years ago. And I did, before I came in to coach the O-line at NTU, I did some work on like data analytics and game planning and looking at tendencies. A bit about me. So professionally, I I lead a team of managers who lead about 400 colleagues. And I do a lot of work with coding and data analytics. And I bring that into my coaching and game planning. And I can see Coach Butler nodding because he's seen some of my game plans before. So yeah, I go into some pretty psychotic detail.
Yes, that leaves me. So
Yes.
I'm Ryan Baker. I'm a newly free agent offensive coordinator. I've been around Midlands football for a little while. Spent a long time in the university leagues with the Birmingham Lions and up through seniors with people like Tamworth and most recently the Sandwell Steelers.
Awesome. So as we could tell, the plan from this was to get a wealth of experience. And I think we've got that and some different views on stuff. So hopefully this will be a good show. So we'll start with our first question of the day. And again, whoever wants to jump in first, feel free. Just rotate it around themselves. Whoever wants to jump in. Our first question of the day, for those of you that haven't seen the questions, it is: what is your offensive philosophy, if you have one? I know everybody has one, and I'm not sure that you need one, but if you have one, what is your offensive philosophy? And why, probably, is a good question.
Cool. I'm cool to start with this one. So having been a career defensive player, I think I had 1 season as a wide receiver and did some both way football, but I was never really that good at football, but I got it mentally. So having come from a defensive background and initially been a defensive coach, is my offensive philosophy is kind of do the stuff that I hated to cover. So for me, like my philosophy now is death by formation. So we run like a couple of plays, but we put lots of window dressing in. We make it look lots of different, but we're running like maybe 5, 6 plays, and we just run it with different formations, with different motions, different keys. I really sort of looking at, okay, what is their strength cause? So I put a tight end in on one side, and then I'll put a running back in on the other side, and really sort of like flip that over and stress the defense of, okay, well, if they're trying to work out what the strength is, then they're not really going to be focused what they should be on. Okay, what's a play? What's a situation? So I try to create sort of ambiguity for the defense, and go with like a tempo where I take it out of the defensive coordinator's hands. So lots of trips, motion from trips, motion to trips, because we see in the UK, defenses, they see trips and they have like 3 plays. So if I go into trips, I can see the start of the game. Okay, this is how they're going to tend to go against trips. If I motion from trips to spread, I'm probably going to have 1 play where they see, okay, trips, motion to spread, 1 play. And the same from spread to trips. You're going to see what their base plays are, and you're taking that play calling away from the DC. So that's me for philosophy.
I can jump in there, kind of go next. So I'm a big end zone guy, so I'm sure anybody that's kind of been around the BAFCA conventions and stuff like that recently will be kind of well aware of kind of Noel Mazzoni and his philosophy, and then what some other guys have kind of expounded on that. But it's kind of a zone read run game paired with air raid passing concepts. I'm also like a big if-then guy, so everything we do is built off of something else. So we know people will counter us in only so many number of ways. So it's having an answer for that before they've done it. So it kind of allows us to not think so much and just go out and play. And we also try and run everything at absolute kind of warp speed. So as fast as we can get the call in, get everybody lined up, get the motions kind of adjusted, then that's what we're going to do. So come right out and attack people. Obviously in kind of Britball, you're not getting the standard kind of full week of work with guys. So you have to find ways to react quickly and have kind of those answers going in before you get a crazy look from a defense that you haven't seen on film in their first 3-4 games, or the guys you're doing something that you haven't really planned on. If you have those answers built in, I found that it gives us a lot of success, and you don't have guys panicking as much, and including myself as a play caller and the rest of the coaches. It makes it easy because it's just kind of very robotic, and we move to this, then to this. They're going to counter with this. It kind of takes all the ambiguity out of it.
I guess for me, like, I've tried to move away from an offensive philosophy in terms of what I want to do. So I don't particularly pin my hat on anything in particular, given the way that we rotate players through in Britball.
Yeah.
I don't want to come out and say I'm a spread guy or I'm a double tight end guy, I'm a wingback guy. Like, my philosophy has moved kind of away from offensive football and more to be a coaching philosophy. And I kind of try and use that as the backbone of what I teach. So a lot of my stuff is, I want to try and get 4 yards of play. I'm going to treat first down and third down exactly the same, so that to try and build that confidence in the guys, so that we don't get to third down and now everyone's panicking that, we're behind the chains and stuff like that. So I've tried to move more away from this is my style of offense to this is what I want to do on the field. This is what I expect of my guys. This is what I expect of myself. And moved more into like a more backbone coaching philosophy than an offensive philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Ryan to an extent. That it's almost 2 separate things, isn't it? You have your coaching philosophy, which kind of gives you the rules and the morals and kind of how you act in the game of football and how you want to approach your offence or defence, whatever it might be. But from an offensive point of view, at the Exiles, I'm very similar to what Grant was outlining, which, I mean, if you want to define it, I would define it as a no-huddle tempo power spread is what we do, but in a practical sense, very similar to Grant. A few base plays that we could become very good at, hopefully, with a lot of window dressing, movement formations and motions and things like that. One of my biggest bugbears with Britball is this common thing of, oh, you can't make it too complicated because you don't have the time and the resource and the practices and things like that with the players. And whilst I agree with that to some extent, for me, it's about teaching methods and how you actually get it across to your players as opposed to what you're putting in. So I don't think giving players 15, 20 formations to learn is that difficult. Obviously, if you teach it in a bad way, it's going to come out in a bad way, but the guys are picking it up relatively easily. But again, just to reiterate what Grant was saying, for me, it's about laying down a set of rules and sort of the system outline, and then everything else just branches off of that as window dressing or minor tags, RPOs, whatever it might be. And kind of what Ryan was alluding to, it doesn't have to be set in stone. Like whatever I run in 2021 might be completely different to what I run in 2022, even though the system and everything else remains the same. If that makes sense. But yeah, and kind of again what Levi was saying, want to try and run it, not necessarily run it at warp speed, but have the ability to run it at warp speed. So we want to be able to snap the ball within 5-6 seconds from the ball being spotted, but also take up as much time on the clock as at the same time. So a little bit of what everyone said, I think.
Like it. Okay, question 2 is, it's the big A, it's adversity. I'm sure as a coach and offense coordinator, we all have gone through it at some point in various guises. So my question for you is, have you ever have to deal with adversity? If you haven't yet, then you're very lucky. I'll be honest with you. If you're this far in the game right now, and you're at OC, you've dealt with adversity at some point. So if you have had adversity, like let's say you've come into the halfway point of a season, or a coaching change, or you've had no quarterback going into a year, or 3 offensive linemen all year, you know, the usual Britball adversity that you get. The question to you guys is, how have you dealt with that, or how would you deal with that to get yourselves into a competitive frame of mind and a competitive state? If everyone wants to take that, can feel free, because I'm sure it's going to be a good topic.
Yeah, I can lead off with this one. So I had a pretty recent one in a national semi-final. Walked in at half-time 20-0 down against the East Kilbride Pirates, which wasn't as we expected the game plan to go, as you can imagine. But luckily we came out of the break and actually went on to win that game 21-0. Sorry, not 21-0, 21-20, sorry. And for me, it was more about walking into that half-time speech and just kind of resetting the guys. I think as I walked into half-time, they expected me to go off like a rocket, I think. And actually, I did the complete opposite. I went in there, had a laugh and joke with them, just kind of settled them down again. You know, told them what we were doing wrong, where we needed to fix it, and where I was going wrong and where I would fix it for them. And I was lucky enough that they, you know, put their faith in me, and I put my faith in them, and we went on to win the game, which was great.
Yeah, I can jump in, kind of building off what Ryan said there. Last year was our first year up in Division 1, so we'd kind of been going through a whole program rebuild and those types of things. So obviously stepping up in competition, it's kind of a wake-up call very, very quickly for the guys. But we tried to build everything we did as a team off of kind of the slogan of play the next play. So it's not necessarily just speaking of kind of individual plays within the game, but it's always looking forward and looking at ways to improve. there's nothing we can do. Like, if you've dropped a pass, you've dropped a pass. You know it more than kind of anybody. If we're struggling, if we're not executing, if the play calling is wrong, all of those things have kind of happened in the past, and there's nothing we can do about that. But what we can do is affect change moving forward. So that's been our big one, is looking at play the next play, make sure we're moving forward, learning from the mistakes we've made, and then correcting them at the next opportunity. Because everybody can get pissed off, everybody can get angry, they can do all these types of things, but it's not going to solve anything. If anything, it's going to negatively affect everything else moving forward. And we tried to carry that throughout the entire season. Obviously, playing teams like with Ryan and Sandwell, it's a big step up very, very quickly. So it was a wake-up call in a lot of instances, but the guys fought and kind of held on to that, and it put us in a better place than where we'd started at the end of the season. So we were able to learn a lot from that.
Cool. So adversity for me, I had a couple where I could think of, and the toughest one for me as a coach was when I was head coach at West Sports University. We managed to get 50 sets of kit from them because as the team in Division 2, we got like 3 wins one year, and we got the most Bucks points for the university. So for them, we bought in like 80% of their Bucks points. So they wanted to like throw money at us. The difficulty we had was that the main campus where all of the equipment was stored is on Baker Street in central London. So the players had to come to Baker Street to get equipment. We then had to travel to Chiswick in like West London. So that took us on a tube, and then we had to get all of our team onto a coach, like public transport, tube, rush hour, sort of like 6 o'clock, onto a coach to the field. We weren't allowed to use the 3G. We had to go on grass, and they had like these like petrol floodlights that like they'd like get running for us. And because of that, it was so hard to recruit kids. Like university is like notorious for getting kids to practice if you're at like one of these small schools that don't have a lot of support. So we would recruit every year, like a good recruitment, we'd have 25 players. And there just was no appetite. Now, the saving grace we had is that we had a lot of Americans that would come over to Westminster because they're tied to Rochester University. So it's like, I think like Div 2 college, but they'd come over for a term here and there. So we got lucky a couple of times. We played against Adam a few times. And we've got this like Div 2, like amazing wide receiver where you put it wherever you want. But what we found was that even with that small squad, we put so much focus on team. Like every game we went to, we were underdogs. We went to Kingston University to play them one time, and Kingston were really good. They had like guys at Warriors and Blitz, and they had F.A. Abad. Like the whole squad was absolutely packed full of talent. And we went there, and it like and they should have absolutely destroyed us because we went there with like 16, 17 players. Like most of the guys going both ways. But like I find sometimes is, and we've all been there, where you've got a small squad and you're traveling and you get off the bus and you can see the other team looking at us like, oh, is that their whole squad? And those are the days, like, and my best memories of like playing football was when we had depleted squad, we were complete underdogs, double coverage said we'd lose, like we'd get destroyed, and you come together so much. So we had this whole season of just coming together, and like just we'd lose games because you lose games if you take 16 people to a match, but we'd come out of games that we've lost, and if you would watch us and the way we were interacting with each other and the players, they knew they'd done everything they could. They fought all the way to the fourth quarter. Like they were happy with what they'd done because they knew that they couldn't do anything else. And there was like this huge team feeling. I remember against Kingston, like afterwards, like it seemed like we had won the game because they were really unhappy because they only scored 3 scores on us and we'd scored on them. And it's just like amazing. I don't know if you guys have been through something similar.
That just sounds like Division 2 Uniball to me. That's a week in, week out thing. Division 2 Uniball. If you haven't experienced it, it's a life choice.
And then lastly, for me, as soon as you said adversity, 2 examples popped into my head that are of the same scenario. 2 different universities. We had very talented quarterbacks starting for both our offences. One example is at the University of Kent, one's at City University now. When they were, one was American, one was Canadian, they had some experience in the game. They just immediately elevated the team. It would be the same roster, but everyone just played a little bit better because they had a quarterback that kind of knew what they were doing. You didn't have to spend a huge amount of time. This is university, so obviously you only have 5 weeks or whatever to get them ready if you're lucky. You have to spend a huge amount of time teaching them the mechanics and things like that. You're just basically trying to do install. And in both scenarios, we were having a fairly successful year. We lost one through a freak injury. Just his Achilles went without any contact, out for the season. And the other one, I think there was relationship issues going on outside of football, and he was kind of around. He played like 4 games and balled out, and then he kind of fell off the radar a little bit. And so it just, again, like I said, it elevates your offense, but as soon as they're gone, everyone gets deflated because the second guy or the third guy, they're the ones that you do have to spend time on with the mechanics because they're a freshman or a second-year player that haven't really got much experience, and now all of a sudden your offense grinds to a halt. So they were a bit, as soon as you lose those kind of guys on your squad, especially at the quarterback position, you as a coaching staff just kind of take a step back and go, right, let's reevaluate everything. And the way we kind of overcome it was, putting a huge amount of faith in the guys that took over, even through their deficiencies, especially I think both of them were British in both sense, that they didn't have like the time growing up, learning the game sort of thing. They were fresh-faced, spending more time with them in the mechanics, but from an offensive point of view, scaling back a huge amount of what we can do. So it wasn't a case of, I think we were very fortunate in both sense that, well, for me anyway, that I had the foresight and my coaching staff had the foresight of not training them up and now having to train them up because they need to play. But they were very sufficient, at the very least, in all of our base runs, all of our base handoffs, all of our base passing plays. They can make the simple throws. So it was just a case of, from a coaching point of view, having to readjust our play calling to suit this new player. Now, were we as successful? Absolutely not, because when you lose a superstar guy, it does take an effect. But at the same time, we were still competitive. We were still in games. We still won games, but we lost games that maybe we shouldn't have lost. But that's the kind of adversity you face as offensive coordinator when you've got a huge amount of stock in a guy to run your offense as a quarterback. When you're losing, you've got to have a backup plan from day one, really. So that would be my advice for any OCs out there, is try and imagine the worst case scenario that's going to happen in the season, because chances are it's going to happen, and have that plan in place.
Do you mind if I ask a follow-up question?
Of course you can.
Of course.
Excuse me. So I think in that conversation, there's a lot of kind of next man up, team ethos, next play. How do you guys then manage that kind of headline, tagline kind of thing versus it getting tuned out by the guys for being overused? Like, how do you take that kind of philosophy, ethos kind of strap line and make it workable without it getting tuned out?
For me personally, in that situation, I'm not sure if I've ever been a guy that sort of spouts, one-liners or things like that. Next man up. I mean, I probably have said it at some point. I think everyone's said it at some point. But like I say, I think the critical part is when you are actually, and like I say, I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by some smart coaches that had the foresight to do this. When you go day one and this superstar turns up, you can't just throw all your eggs into that basket. You throw a lot of eggs into that basket and just hope that he rides you through. But for our indie periods, our install and all that kind of stuff, we want to try and make sure that plan B is sufficient and we actually rep it and we actually coach it. And to be fair, in the case of the guy that got injured, who played a very good level of football over in North America, he actually had the foresight to go, I don't need to take all the reps, I'm going to come out because this guy's going to get reps as well. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it's just a case of, and I guess it applies to every position on the field. You will have special players somewhere. Every team has a special player, don't they? But you've got to kind of make sure that coaches are ready for that plan B, whether that guy gets injured or he's not there, or he's got a wedding that day or something, that you've got someone in there that can do the job as reasonably well as possible in that place. But I'm not sure if that answers your question, Coach, but yeah, plan B is what I would say.
I think for me, to kind of avoid, maybe off on a tangent, but to avoid kind of like that washout that you were talking about, it's big on finding that one thing that sticks and then building your whole kind of culture around that. So not throwing out thousands and thousands of kind of one-liners and coach speak and all the same old crap that we've all heard, because you guys know as well as the players will know, you hear it, you laugh, it's funny, it is what it is, but none of that kind of really sticks. So I think if you build your culture around those types of ideas and you instill those ideas into the team in whatever you're doing, whether you're doing an indie drill, whether you're doing kind of an interactive classroom session, if those ideas are always there and you're always trying to drive home that message, whether it's kind of straight up or whether it's kind of in the background, if you're driving home that culture, those things tend to stick with the guys a little bit more, and it kind of transforms from, oh, that's just some kind of BS coaches coming out with because you watched Hard Knocks last night, or no, this is actually kind of what we're trying to build on and what we're trying to build around. So we've kind of found great buy-in by doing that, because we've all been there. And probably everybody watching has watched Hard Knocks, has watched all these shows, and they've loved bits and pieces, or you see something that's, oh, that's great, like I'd love to use that slogan or that saying for our team, and then you find yourself one after the other, and then nothing really sticks because it's just the same old crap. So building your culture around the central message of what you're trying to get across, I found kind of has helped us.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a weird position right now, is we don't have a team slogan at Caesars. So like historically, when we had the issues with Westminster, we had great slogan. It was like the university slogan for all the sports teams, or like that they did sport, but they all weren't very good. And it was bring the fire. So like the players would be like, come on, let's bring the fire. And they genuinely, it wasn't cheese because we were the Dragons. So like that was like the expectation. And because I had played a couple of years before, I played for a season. One of my other coaches has played as well. So we played alongside them, exactly the same situation where there's like 15, 16, I think 14 on one game. Like we were kind of had that brotherhood with the players as well, because we'd been with them. So they knew that we were all in, like we were absolutely in for it. And we were fighting just as much as they were to like get that every yard. They knew that me and the other coach, so Alex was the quarterback the previous year, I'd played like all over the place. They knew that we put our bodies on the line every week, and we played both ways, and we got every rep, and we had every practice. So they knew for us as the coaching staff now that had come in to replace the leaving team coaches, like they trusted us, and they knew that this wasn't just like a bit of fun on a Sunday for us. Like this was our team too. So it's kind of unique. You don't get to go into a lot of coaching positions where like you've played with the players and they feel like they're your brothers, and it really is we, rather than I want you guys to go out there. It's we could win this.